morning, Signature Real Estate Group. Welcome to the new Spanish Ridge office. What do you guys think? Very good, right? So did everyone have a very happy new year? Anyone do anything fun? Go down to the, who went down to the strip? Really? 2 people. Well, are you guys new to Las Vegas or what? Anyone go down to Fremont Street? I heard that was the best time in town. Yeah. So we've got some quick announcements that we're going to make. First off, before Janet goes into some information about committees, did you know that your Las Vegas Realtor dues are due? Yeah. Okay, good. Well, make sure you pay them on time. I think it's by January 5th, or they charge you a $50 inconvenience fee. Now that I'm on the board, we don't say things like late fees anymore. We say inconvenience fee. I wanted to also point out, if you didn't know, the Southwest office is officially closed. There's nobody there. There's no desks there or chairs or anything for you to sit in. So please don't go there anymore. But if you would bring back your fob, we have a small reimbursement that we can offer you if you can find it. And we're willing to trade that for a fob for this office or another one. So if you have those with you, please see Haley at the front desk, for sure. The new Russell office is, of course, open Monday through Friday and staffed. We have some extra offices that are being built this weekend. And yes, Janet, this weekend. They're going to go right here. So if you're still looking for an office, let us know. And we have some 6 workstations that are going in on the other side of this wall. So it's going to be really cool. And we have CE classes all month long in this office. First off, on January 5th, we have a contracts class from 10 to 1. On the 18th, we have Vonana's open house class from 11 to 2. We have an ethics class on the 19th from 10 to 1. And we have an agency class from 10 to 1 as well on the 26th. So if you need all of those core classes, let Lois know. And she's got a calendar over there with all the dates on it.
That you can read.
Yes. Any questions on anything I just said?
And the 27th, there's also a 1-hour CE class on 1031 exchanges, which is almost full. People read somewhere, they read, I'm so excited, and they RSVP'd.
What time is the 1 hour?
1.
1 o'clock. Okay, perfect. And then, of course, next week, we have, from 1 to 2, we have post-licensing here in this office from 9 to 5, except for Tuesday morning, which will be virtual, because we'll be here for the sales meeting. That's all the announcements I have, and before we go into our meeting, does anyone have any new listings or buyer and seller needs they want to bring up? Barbara.
I have a buyer who wants a single-story, gate-guarded community, no pool. Now that sounds, it's not easy. It's not easy to find. And he would really like to stay in Red Rock because that's where he is now. And if I can find him a house today, I'll be listing his house on Red Arrow. So if anybody knows anything coming up in Red Rock, that'd be awesome.
No pool. Would he fill it in?
Yes, it would.
Okay. Ellie.
Have a new listing going live Friday. It's going to be 340. It's about 1,500 square feet, 2-story over by Warm Springs and Buffalo. Beautiful home. It has a built-in tenant who's been a tenant there for 8 years, pays on time, takes great care of the place. So if you want an investor, perfect for him.
What was the price?
340.
340. That's a steal at half the price. Anybody else? Anybody else? All right. Todd.
So we've got a single-story, 4-bedroom in Providence that's coming back on the market on the 18th. 585, no pool, not Red Rock, sorry. It is single-story in a gated community, so it'll be back on the market here in about 2 weeks.
Going once? Going twice? Perfect. And for the first time this year, we have Shelly P. with Prosperity. Shelly, come on up. Give her a round of applause.
Happy New Year, everyone. Happy Tuesday. I feel like, okay, we can't make this like the gym, right? The first day of every year, the gym is packed. Make sure that you guys show up every single Tuesday at 9:30. All right, so I just wanted, it's been like 2 weeks since I last saw you. Sorry, Janet, I don't like speaking behind you. So I just wanted to refresh everybody's memory because I did actually speak to an agent yesterday and they were like, hey, I didn't know that loan amounts actually increased. They thought the loan amounts were still in the 500 range for conventional. Those have increased to 647,200. So 5% down, that's a sales price of 681. Anybody got a buyer looking for 681 sales price home? Anyone? Bueller? No. Okay. FHA is now up to 420,680, 3.5% down. That makes that 435. Your VA again is unlimited. The down payment assistance program, the teacher program was set to expire at the end of this year. It's actually being renewed, extended through end of March, so March 2022. I'll have to get that out of my vocabulary. That's a $7,500 bonus, down payment assistance plus the 2.75 interest rates. So just to give you an update as to where rates are today, yesterday we had a reprice for the worst. So we're still really good at the low threes, but we did go from 2.99 to 3.125. I know, it's crazy, life-changing, shattering. But they are saying that rates are actually going to increase, and they're saying the Fed is going to talk in March. There's a 54% chance that that's going to happen in March, and like a 68% chance that it's going to happen in May. So just to prepare your clients, because a shift for some clients who are hitting the 681 sales price, they could be tipping the income limit on that as far as debt to income ratio is concerned. With rates moving, that could tip them over. That's all I have. Do you have any questions at all for me? Just to remind you all also, we'll all be hovering in this hanging out here in this beautiful office in Spanish Ridge. So Miriam, Tony, Jason, who mistakenly went to the Southwest office this morning, is making his way here. Gabby, Myra is in Green Valley, myself in Green Valley. We are actually bringing on a new loan officer who will more than likely be at Sun City. But know that we're all here to help you. Thank you guys all for your support last year, and I will hand this back to Chris.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
So if you guys haven't noticed, we changed locations a little bit, right? So we have this beautiful new office, and Brandon has an announcement for you all.
Oh, sorry.
What?
Oh yeah, since Shelley leaked it out, Sun City. All right, so many of you know we had a satellite office in Sun City, Summerlin, that was run by Dave and Norris Lego. It was kind of a team office. Dave's retiring as a broker. Their lease was up, they weren't going to renew, so we went ahead and leased some space in that area, right across the breezeway, as they moved out of that. So we've got about 2,500 square feet now. Lots of workstations, room in there too. It's still in the 89134 zip code, which was important to a lot of people. But that's another location that you guys can utilize, make calls from. There's great workstations, great workspace, and even a few offices still there to rent. So if you're interested, yes?
What's the address or where is it?
9310 Sun City Boulevard. It's right in the heart of Sun City, Summerlin, right by the Chase Bank.
Right by your mama's house.
There's literally the restaurant next door called my mom's
Oh,
house.
I know that.
I was like, that was mean, but it's right, it is. That's hilarious. All right. So anyway, right now, if you have any interest in that, or that it's open regular hours, but if you're interested in working out there or more running some space, for sure, see Chris.
Yeah, so I'm really excited about this office because I'm the interim broker for it. So if you are looking for space, definitely let me know because we have some offices available for rent. We even have some offices that have individual desks so you could share an office if you wanted a workspace. The coolest thing is if you're writing an offer in Summerlin or Desert Shores or Sun City, you don't have to come all the way back to the office. You can come right there. We have Wi-Fi. There's 2 computer stations set up. There's a work area for you to sit down with clients. So come in and enjoy it. It feels just like home, kind of like your mama's house. Okay, so we're going to do our broker panel, but we're going to do it a little bit differently today. I'm going to ask some provocative questions. Not really. Tom's all excited now. I want to know from you guys first to kind of break the ice. Tell us what your New Year's resolution was. And Tom, you can go first. Keep it clean.
It's already been broken. I was not going to swear for a couple days, but damn it, I didn't do it.
That was really it.
That was it. Look, obtain reachable goals.
All right, so many of you know that I've taken over president at LVR this year. And so my resolution this year is not to F it up.
So far, so good.
I don't do New Year's resolutions, so I don't have anything. Yeah, I have never done it. My goal is to, my big goal for the year is $750,000 in GCI for my team.
Wow. Janet, tell us your resolution.
I don't make New Year's resolutions either, Todd, because
job,
I
Janet.
figure if there's something that needs to be changed and I discover this really needs to be changed, or I really need to do this in August, why am I waiting until January? So I don't do them.
So I actually have two. My first
This
one-
question was so Chris could tell you his was.
Accountability.
Would you like a-
My first one is that I'm gonna have this office completed in a week. You ever guys see that movie Money Pit? Yeah. And the contractor comes in and they say, how long? And he says, 2 weeks. I've been telling Janet that for 3 months. Right? But it really has taken that long with permitting and everything we've been going through, so 2 weeks. And then my other thing is, I'm gonna get back to my pre-COVID weight. Not far off.
Do you want to share that with
I
us?
might lose this hand or this hand. I don't know. Okay, so next question is, what do you suggest is the best thing an agent should be doing in January and February to make their business the best they can?
This is the perfect time to be cleaning up your database. Perfect reason to call everybody saying, I'm just making sure I have the right address and phone number. How was your January? That's not a business call. It's a how you doing call, and it's easy, simple, and you're not being pushy, right? You're not being a salesperson. You're being a friend.
That's a great advice.
What Tom said.
Oh, wow, it's a new year. New year.
I would say, well, hopefully you didn't stop working in October, November, December, because that's really what's going to set the tone for your first quarter. But if you did, now would be the time to touch base with your database prospect, start filling that funnel so that you can have a good spring.
If you didn't create a business plan in 2021, you need to do it in the next 2 weeks. Like Chris is going to get the office done in the next 2 weeks, you need to get your business plan done in the next 2 weeks, and then you need to stick to it.
Well, I think we all pretty much have the same idea. You need to get in touch with your sphere of influence. Friendly calls always work very well. But the other thing too, you have a reason to get in contact, most of you. Those of you that have moved to this office, say, hey, just wanted to let you know my office has moved, it's brand new, want to stop by, give me a call, I'd love to give you a tour of the office. And also do a mailer. Hey, I have a new address.
That is great advice. I love that. Shelley, I'm actually going to ask you some of these questions, so I'm glad you're still here.
Oh.
What's yours?
So, this actually
Come on up, we
goes
gotta
along
see
with
for
that.
you.
Who is it?
Come on up.
Database
Come on.
management. So, no, this is actually just for database management, to what you guys were talking about. So, I call it the ABCs of database management. So, when you start off with, it's not super overwhelming. You start off with A the first week, right? B the second week. So you will touch every single client's by alphabet. A, whether it's first name or last name. B the second week. So you should be if you follow this, you'll touch your clients twice a year, right? 26 letters in the alphabet, 52 weeks in the year. And that's a way to also go back and clean up your database. ABC is a database.
Do you want to share with us your resolution?
So I bought this new house. My New Year's resolution is to be in there for my birthday, which is April 12th.
Very cool. Good luck. All right, so Tom actually stole mine, and I don't know how, because I wrote these questions, I held them with me, so that's what I did. But I've got one for you. So anyone ever have a client move twice in the same year? I've actually had it happen quite a bit, and the sad thing is once they did it with me, right? And the problem is that people change jobs in a new year, they change schools for their kids, life happens, and you need to make sure you're at least following up with the fact that they moved into that new home you sold them, and are they considering moving again for any one of their life reasons. And so I actually had a client about 6 years ago. I sold them a beautiful $1 million house, and I moved them in, and I thought there's no way these people are moving. And of course, 6 months later, they got a job transfer, and they went to the company that was assigned to them versus calling me, and all I had to do was follow up with a phone call. So don't miss out on the people you've sold houses to this year by getting a residual business.
Yeah, being successful in real estate is the art of selling them the wrong home the first time.
I will be recording this because that was good. Fun, and I'll ask you the same question. Hold on, what was it again?
New Year's resolution.
Oh, yeah. Do you want to share a New Year's resolution that you had?
I don't make New Year's resolutions.
Oh, 3 in a row, right there. They sat together. And then, what do you suggest is the best thing an agent should be doing in January, February of this year to have their best business possible? There you go.
Oh, me? Oh, you've already answered it? Oh, what did you say?
Seems the same realm.
Wait, what did you say? So, honestly, get your SOI in place. Make sure that your sphere of influence is hearing from you. I just sent a message to my team this morning saying your tax assessments have gone out. Contact everybody in your SOI and tell them how to read that, what their current values are. It'll help you touch base with them again, Happy New Year, blah, 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 all those things.
So you bring up something, my first job in a real estate office was to white out closing statements. And I don't mean like before someone signed them, I mean like after we got it.
No whiteout allowed in this office, by the
You
way, ever.
used to get as a brokerage both sides of the closing statement, and you would send it to your client, but you couldn't send them both sides then, and you had to white out one side of it, so it was their copy of their statement. Now, of course, they get both sides of the statement, but the point was, they paid me like $20 an hour to just do this. It was a good job. I don't care what you say. Okay, so this is a transaction question. It came up the other day, and I think it's a really good one because I think it's really good. What is the role of a home inspector, and should one be done in a new home?
Yes.
Have you seen how they build homes?
So so the home inspector I don't have to have the mic. Okay. So the home sorry. The home inspection is really important on new homes. I had a client that actually got one done after I recommended it. They got one done. Air conditioning unit was not hooked up. And it was the day before closing, and we were able to catch it. Home inspectors should be contacting the builders to make sure that they have all of their insurance in place and whatnot, that the builders will allow them in. They can also do the home inspection on a 4-phase inspection process. So before they actually pour the foundation, once they've actually put the frame in, then, right, so there's electrical, so that they can see across, like as it's being built, what's actually happening. There's some great inspectors in town. Of course, they're not going to take on full liability for everything, but at least a client knows what they're walking into at closing.
Awesome. Yeah. Does anyone have anything to add?
No, that's.
Yes, I had that same experience basically when I built my house 20 years ago now, well, 21 years ago. And I hired my favorite home inspector to come by after hours as things were progressing and just kind of do a walkthrough. Well, they had put the insulation in the roof, excuse me, but we had a horrendous windstorm. And he showed up and discovered that, yeah, most of the insulation had blown out, but the drywallers were going right ahead and drywalling anyway, because they weren't the insulation people, they were the drywall people, and that was their day to drywall. So it helps.
So this question came up yesterday from an agent who was going through the process. Of course, here at the company, we require a document that shows that you notified your client what a home inspection is. And surprisingly, we deal with a lot of acronyms and terms that people don't understand. And so we asked you to make that point of having that sign. And the agent said, well, what would a home inspector do with a new home? The builder's building everything. And so, Ivana, what you explained is absolutely perfect. That, you know, as you go through the process, you could also have a contractor, if they knew one, sidewalk the property. And I think that is a way to tie the buyer in to the fact that it's going to be a 3 to 5 month close. And if you buy the home at the sales office and you never see it again until it actually closes, how much time could go by? And so is the buyer really enticed or excited about the closing? And if you were to go and do all of those different sidewalks and take photos and share with your client the story of their home, is this a sales factor why you're a great agent and you deserve a good commission on a new home sale? Not that the builder's going to get it, but there you go.
If you don't think that your new home buyer is not going by that home as it's being built, you are way out of wackiness. So they're going there anyway, so you might as well make it something that you provide to them as well, so that they feel good about you, okay? Tie yourself into that new home with them.
It's like a different person in the new year. So it's funny he says that because my grandfather bought a house in Desert Shores, and he made friends with everyone that lived in the area as it's being built and knew all the guys working on the house. He was taking them beer while he was doing the job, and then they would do extra things in the house for it. But yeah, it was a family field trip. What do you want me to tell you? The next question is on the same line of sight, the walkthrough, right? So in a new home, when the builder says the home's done, we're going to do a site walk, you're going to come by and you're going to take a blue tape, and you're going to tell us everything that's wrong with the property. Would you suggest that they hire the home inspector back to do that, or try to do it themselves?
Both. I think both parties should be there. Home inspector, you should be there as an agent, helping them find things that need to be tagged, and then they should be there as well. So, I mean, you should literally have as many people there as you can.
More ice, the better.
More ice, the better. Okay, the next question comes from Todd. Todd has taken notice that many people are not using the new listing agreement, so let's talk about why that's a bad thing and what you can do to fix it.
I just wanted to say, start using it. Like, that's all. I don't know what the bad part is, that it's been updated and you need to use the new one because it protects you in some areas that I don't even know that's really that important to talk about, but you need to use the new one. And if you keep sending me the old one, I'm not going to sign it anymore. So you need to start sending me the new one.
Okay, so the old one will stay in transaction desk as long as you have some that are saved as files, right? If you delete all your old ones out of there, the old one won't be there anymore, right? So many people use the old one out of habit or whatever, but and not knowing what's in the new one. But I'm going to tell you, there are some significant changes in there, and one of them has to do with the commission, right? Who's noticed what's wrong or what's different with the commission? What's different? It doesn't list the co-op anymore. Why do you think that is?
Because the commission belongs to the listing agent.
Commission belongs to the listing broker, right? And here's the thing, and then we decide how we spend that marketing dollars or whatever. Now, that doesn't give you the right to go in and tell the seller that you're going to offer X number of bananas across the MLS and then offer Y. You need to do what you tell them you're going to do, but the idea is, this is to change the perception, or the perception of the consumer was that I'm paying the listing agent and I'm paying the buyer's agent. And that's not the case. They're paying the listing agent and the listing broker is paying the buyer's broker, right? And so that's why this is done this way, is to clear that up. And many of you know there's been class action lawsuits and stuff filed against NAR, and this is set to protect us in the long run here. So there's a lot of people kicking and screaming about it because they think that this gives opportunity for the listing agents to play unfair and continue to change the co-op and stuff like that. But just offer a fair compensation. Do your business like you've always done it. But the listing agreement is very important that you're using this one because it's set to protect us and our industry. And so if you have questions on it, come see us.
Let me also say, there's only one spot now for you to list the total commission that the seller is going to pay. I'm getting some where it comes in and let's say the seller is going to pay 6 bananas and they're putting 3 there because they still think that's just the listing side or the co-op side. So the whole amount goes there. The full amount they're going to pay goes on that slot. That makes sense.
So the other thing that's really important is when the board changes forms, they're usually doing it just to screw with you. They're doing it based on state law changing in most cases. That's why we change the contract so often. And the problem is, if you're using an old version, it may violate state law. And so there's some arguments in some E&O cases that haven't covered an agent because did you know the listing agreement has changed? The answer is yes. You've been told by everybody, by your email, by your broker, by everyone in your office. And so reasonable skill and care dictates that you should know what you should have known. And if you knew the listing agreement changed to protect the seller because of a law or a reason that's out there, you could be in violation of that. And there's a chance an E&O company may not cover it because you didn't use the most updated form. And so I just think you should take that back.
And there's a good chance our E&O company wouldn't cover it. One of the questions when we apply every year is, do you use the current board forms? Because they know that they're the best forms other than other people just writing them up. So make sure you're using those.
Go ahead.
More. Look, and it doesn't mean you don't have the conversation with the seller of what you're going to be offering to the other side. That still remains the same, right? It's not just 6% and that's it, or whatever it is, but you're talking to them about what we're going to offer, because guess what? They're going to be able to see it real soon on the public websites, on what the co-op of what you're offering for that property. So if you tell them it's going to be 3 and you have it in there for 2.5 or 2, you're going to get in trouble. They're going to see it and you're going to just ruin your reputation. So don't ruin your reputation.
Have the current president expand on that a little bit.
So in the last NAR, National Association of Realtors board meeting, there was a motion that came across basically that now, and it passed, that now the co-op will be listed on all board sites. So like LasVegasRealtor.com will have to put the co-ops out there, and you're going to see more and more of that on other websites as well. As a brokerage, we have the option either way to do it at this point, but the information is going to be out there, so they will see what you're paying to the other side. So.
they're gonna see it on the commission instructions anyway at the end, so, I mean.
That'll be advanced though, he'll know it before the deal.
Yeah, just, I mean,
It's not gonna be a surprise anymore.
look, we all live by the code of ethics, just be honest with your clients. I mean, don't get all tied up about the, oh my gosh, I could do whatever I want. No, you're gonna do what's fair for your client. I mean, you're gonna ask your client the question. Let me ask you, how much do you think we should be offering the other side? How much should we offering the agent that brings us a buyer for your property? I mean, you're gonna have those kinds of conversations, and then you're gonna do what you and your client decide you're gonna do. You're not gonna be changing it throughout the listing period based on whatever fever you had when you woke up the next morning. I don't know what causes people to change that.
So I want to play devil's advocate on this topic for a minute. Is it a good idea, and I know in some cases we require it in part of the process, but is it a good idea when I write the offer to print out the MLS detail full sheet? Why?
Because it has the co-op listed on it.
Okay, and it's timestamped.
At the time of that you went and showed the property, yes.
There's undoubtedly, we know it's.
Let me be clear, I don't think you should print it out, but I think you should save it on your desktop and put it in your Google Drive. I know he doesn't like Google Drive, but you can use the cloud, you can do whatever you want. You need to have a copy of it somewhere, SkySlope would be good. Yeah, I just, as soon as you said print it, I seen like 1,000 pages coming off the copy of that.
See, yeah, save it wherever you're gonna be able to find it. But the other thing to understand, if you
Reference that MLS number in your purchase agreement, that is now part of the agreement, so you should have it part of the agreement.
So we know that somebody out there is going to try and cheat the system, and they're going to get somebody that calls up and says, hey, I'm writing an offer on your property, and they're going to run into the MLS and try to change the co-op. We know it's going to happen, and it's not going to happen at this company because that's unethical, and that's a liar in my opinion, right? And we know it will happen out there, and so that's why it's a good idea that you document this along the way, because I've been in hearings where the agent brought a time-stamped MLS sheet to prove things that were done in the transaction, and even though it wasn't part of the contract at that point, it did show the intent of the party, and the panel of their peers listened to that. Right, wrong, or indifferent, think about it.
Well, the other thing too is when Dave Sanders was here for our legal update in December, he said changing it like that could be fraud.
Yep,
Not just
sure
code
is.
of ethics, but fraud.
Yep.
And don't be confused, MLS knows exactly when, what time, what day, what hour, when you change the MLS and on anything, in any of those little sections and things. You're gonna get caught, and whoever does it's gonna get caught. Just don't be the one that gets caught, and don't do it.
Don't do it. Okay, before this gets worse, we're going to change sides. Okay, so what items do I need to know as an agent when I'm writing an offer with a tenant in place in the property? What should I be cognizant of as the buyer's agent, and what should I be thinking of as the seller's agent that should be in the offer?
You know, it's difficult to deal with tenants as a listing agent, as a buyer's agent, as a property manager. They don't want to have to move, and they're probably being forced to move because they've been in the property for a long time. So keep that in mind and write your offers subject to inspection so that you can get your deal on the table. If you're waiting for the tenant to provide you with access, you're maybe waiting a whole week while somebody else swoops in, gets the offer accepted, and you're just sitting there holding a waste of paper that's goes in the trash can. So just be good about that one.
I would say that if your client does want to buy the property and it does have a tenant in it, I think it's very important that you have the tenant vacate the property before closing. Because if the tenant's still in the property after closing, that now becomes your buyer's problem to evict them or get them out. So have them out previous to closing so that you can do your walkthrough and it is your buyer's property at that point. So
For me, it's security deposits. Make sure that you're asking for a copy of the existing lease that's in place. That will show you what the security deposit was. Then you can work through how the security deposit gets handled. There's lots of theories out there on how the security deposit needs to get handled. But you'll at least know there is one. You'll know how to handle that, and you'll work through that with both the buyer and the seller.
On your point, though, I want to make sure that if you just think in your mind, I'm asking for the lease, and you tell the other party, that's not contractual. You can put, like Todd
No,
said,
it's got to be in the contract.
And you can make it part of your due diligence period that prior to buyer's cancellation, prior to buyer's completion of due diligence, seller will provide a copy of the lease, the rent records, all of those things. Then it's a contractual obligation of the seller to give it to you and now you have something in the contract that says they will.
And this is also the time when you're going to find out if there isn't a contract.
Yep.
Right, and look, if there isn't a lease agreement, that's a whole nother set of problems that you now know about on day 1 or day 2 of your contract rather than on day 15, 18, or 25. So just asking for a copy of that contract, making sure that you dictate how the security deposits are handled, how the prorations are going to be handled at, depending on what day of the month you're closing. I'm with Brandon. If the tenant, if the listing agent is saying to you, tenant's going to move out, don't worry about it, tenant's going to move out. Look, get it in writing. Make sure that you protect your buyer by saying something along the lines of close of escrow to be automatically extended by so many days, however long it takes tenant to get out. I mean, try to figure that out, but tenant has to be out of the property. If you're buying a property like Ellie is selling, that's got an 8-year tenant in it that are probably going to keep staying in, you don't want that tenant to get out, obviously, right? But the one that is planning to move out upon close of escrow, they got to be out before you close. Yes.
Should it be the same with the solar panel contract?
I couldn't hear you.
Solar panels.
Solar?
Solar panel contract.
Yes, she
Yeah.
said, should we do the same with that?
Yeah, if you know there's solar panels, then yes, you want a copy of that contract during the due diligence period. You want to make sure that your buyer can qualify, so they've got to get a hold of the solar company. You got to talk to the solar company about qualifying for that lease, making sure that that doesn't affect Shelley when they're trying to qualify them. Hey, it's got solar panels. They're gonna have a payment of $53. That's got to go in as part of the debt to income ratio. So all during due diligence, absolutely.
Just to keep it from bottom a second longer. The reason why the rent record is important that I found with investors is if you know the tenant was late 4 times in a row and it showed that on the record of payment, what would that make you feel as an investor buying that property? You'd be a little bit concerned, right? Or if they did pay rent for 11 months and then they caught up because of something else and something. I mean, I'd want to know the investment history of the property I'm buying, and so that's another contractual obligation is I don't put it in there. I might not get those records until 3 or 4 months after I bought the property. And again, that's something you need to be cognizant of. One more thing, just to give it. Hey, Shelley, just on your side of it as a lender, if you see, I see all the time people writing VA, FHA offers to be a primary residence, and there's a tenant in there with a lease that's still going. What would an underwriter say when you guys find out about that if you did?
So we have to show that they're gonna occupy the property within 60 days, right? So even if they have a tenant and it's gonna vacate, and they're gonna vacate or leave end of March, if they closed in February, if our buyer can get in by April 1st, that would be the 60-day time frame, right? That's the only thing that we're gonna look for. We don't need anything else to say that the tenant's moving out, but know that I have some clients saying that, hey, I've got one till June, is that gonna be okay for a primary residence? That's not acceptable. It has to be within 60 days of the occupy the property.
No.
Brandon, you got something?
No, it's my turn. I have the mic. All of you, shush your mouth. So, a couple of things.
One simple thing.
I know, one simple thing. So, you do? Okay.
I do.
So, if you're on the listing side, one of the things that I always recommend is if the property's been managed by a property manager, go ahead and get the actual repair list that's been done with that property manager and give that to the seller so that they can complete their SRPD. Okay? So that's going to be one good thing on the listing side. The contract, the RPA, already talks about prorations and how they're going to be handled. What it doesn't talk about is the security deposit going to go directly to the buyer or to the new property manager, right? So that has to be directed within the contract. So however that client is going to handle it, I always recommend, and you guys can do it how you want, but I recommend to have that credited towards the buyer's closing costs, and then the buyer then after closing gives it to the property management company. I think or if there's already a property management company that they have in place, then the cleanest way to do it is to direct the security deposit to go directly to the property management company. In there you want to get, and I know everybody said here, get it within the due diligence period. I'm going to recommend that you ask for the rent rules as well as the lease agreement within 5 days of the acceptance of the offer. It is within the due diligence period, but if they give it to you on the last day of the due diligence period, there's no automatic extension. You have to go and do all the work that needs to be done to figure out, is there enough deposit? Are they, when you review the rent rolls, did they provide you with all the information that you were supposed to be provided with, or they only gave you 1 or 2, 3 things? So you've got to make sure that all of that's in play. Was there anything else?
No, you did a really good job.
Okay, and then,
There is one other thing I'm probably gonna, so who here has waited to list a property because of tenants in it? Okay, who here has had a buyer not buy a property because they're concerned about having a tenant in it? Why do you let other people dictate your closing, right? You can buy a tenant out of a lease, you can get an owner to buy a tenant out of a lease, and sometimes, right, sometimes if you present the facts and people know that, you'll have a deal that's done this month versus waiting 3 months, and now there's all these other things that come up. And so most, 1, 2, 3 REO brokers that went through that. I mean, we bought tenants out of properties all of the time to get a property listed immediately for a bank. And it's still an option in the marketplace. And we're not talking about a lot of money. In some cases for a few $1,000s, which if you're fighting for a property right now and you're paying above market, above appraisal, what if you could get it for a great price and just have to buy out the tenant, right? Think about those things as you're going through the process.
You also never know if the tenant's ready to move anyway. Like I had a house that I was renting personally, and I wanted to move into it. When COVID started, I wanted to get out of the high rise into a house with dogs, and I just offered them the ability to move early. And they said yes, and they did it.
One more point.
And they moved into your.
If you're doing the home inspection, if you're doing the home inspection and you're there and the tenant's there, and you're doing the inspection and they're talking to you, have you ever asked them where they're moving to? Holy
the other thing I was gonna say is you're gonna ask for rent rolls, you're gonna ask for the lease agreement. Do not forget to ask for the initial walkthrough of the property. You have to get the initial walkthrough, because if that tenant is gonna stay in the property and it's an investment property and the buyer intends to have it as an investment property with the tenant staying in place, when that tenant moves out, you need to know what that property's condition was so that you can handle the security deposit accordingly. Otherwise, there's been times,
Not them. Not them unless they have.
Not you, yeah, property managers, right. Otherwise, the buyer is gonna be pretty pissed off at you for not having that information, because the property manager is gonna just recommend to give the entire security deposit back.
Okay.
Janet, anything?
I have nothing to
None.
say about it.
So the last thing I'll say about renters is it's very common that the seller notices the tenant to move out of the property by a certain date based on your contract, okay? Always ask that the seller provide to you a copy of the written notice given to the buyer in the contract so that you have proof they've been noticed. I have actually seen underwriters ask for a letter because of that 60-day rule. They want to see that the tenant's been noticed that they have to move out and they've been given the proper amount of time to move out.
Cool, we're gonna change gears. So this came up multiple times on our Facebook page, and the brokers were talking about it. Just wanna go over it again. What is the best practice for presenting an offer in person versus just sending it by email for a buyer and a seller?
So you have to make the appointment, obviously, right? Make sure that the seller is open to it. And then have your buyers like waiting, because you want to get an answer. If that seller has any counters, you don't want there to be a delay for you to have to, get in touch with the buyers, blah, all that stuff. So when I did this, I used to have my clients actually waiting in the car, and then I'd head out, I'd have a counter offer in hand, and then I would write the counter offer, have the buyer sign it, and then we'd be ready to go, right? And it would be signed and done. You have to explain each part of the RPA to that seller. You're not necessarily like explaining it to someone else's client, but the benefits of the offer over all the other offers, for instance.
So my best real estate transaction I ever took part in, the easiest money I've ever made, and hopefully they don't watch YouTube every day. I had a property that I was going to take the listing on. It was a military couple moving, and a buyer just found out that the short sale they were buying got foreclosed on. It was the same house in the same community. I went to the listing appointment. I'm presenting to the seller, and I presented a full, listing for me was 7 bananas or whatever you want to call them, plus my transaction fee. And they started, kind of trying to negotiate over the commission. I said, listen, we don't really have time to negotiate. The buyer's been sitting in his car waiting to come into this property. Let's go ahead and sign the contract so I can get the home sold today versus, going back and forth. And the guy's like, that's the best line I've ever heard. And I said, go look out the window. And so he went and looked out. I had the buyer sitting out in the car in front of the house because they wanted the same model, right? I had a buyer-broker agreement with the buyer that guaranteed my commission. And so literally the husband came back and he says, there's a car outside. And they signed the contract, and I sold the house, same thing. I had their offer ready to go because I knew that we were going to be there. And it was a perfect pairing. I mean, they loved each other, they talked about everything, and they had kids similar age. Everything worked out, and they accepted the offer. We didn't have a big counter. It was done. It was a great transaction in a hard market. So, and that's the whole thing, because we presented.
So I'm a big proponent of presenting in person. I think you get paid a lot of money to represent your buyer, and you should do everything you can to represent that buyer instead of just emailing it over to somebody, or in the old days we used to fax it, and just leaving it to chance that the other agent's going to present it in the right light. But the big thing to really understand is do not present an offer to somebody else's client without them being there. Okay? They have to be there. You have to set that appointment up with the listing agent, and they'll set it up with the seller so that you can go present in person. Always show up with everything that you need. That means the pen, the calculator, the counter offer, everything, because at the end of that, they're going to say, well, you know, we're going to counter this, and I'll get you a counter offer in the morning. No, we're there to sell a house. You've got the counter offer form. Let's get it done so that you can get with your client in the car or on the phone or at the Burger King or wherever, so you can get that deal done tonight or today. So, but just remember that the listing agent has to be there, and you have a right to present all counter offers and offers in person. That's per the MLS of the agreements that all of us sign when it's there, unless the seller says no, in writing. And so if I was calling an agent to say, hey, I'd like to present an offer, and they say, what I would really say is, hey, good news is my buyers wrote up an offer on the house, and they've asked me to present the offer in person. And they said, well, my sellers asked me just to bring them over. And I say, great. Then if you can just get me something in writing from your seller so I can present it to my buyer to see if they still want me to present the offer.
I think one of the things that's a misnomer too is that appointment isn't just about selling the seller or the buyer. It's selling the agent that's sitting across from you on why your client's the best. Because do they have pull on what that client does? Absolutely. And can you get them sold through an email or a phone call where it didn't go very well, or a text message that you sent abruptly? But I've sat across from other agents and convinced them of why they should work with me and my client. And it's just like selling a client. I mean, it's getting them to your side.
And there's an art to the whole presentation, right? You know, you have a nice,
That's a book, isn't it?
nice check on, the EMD is on the top of the folder so that they can see it, you know, and it has a big number on there. Everything is about you selling them. And remember all the hullabaloo about the love letters and everything else? Guess what? You get to tell them everything about that you put it in writing in a love letter directly to them and not get in trouble. So use that to your advantage. Because look, I know we're saying, well, why didn't you tell us this 6 months ago or 7 months ago? It's harder to say, but
It takes them that long to process.
yeah, and the market's going to change, right? There's going to come a time where it's going to be a little bit different, and you're going to need to be doing a little bit more sells than it is right now. So get ready to sell by having a great presentation to the other side, right?
And so here's the interesting thing. I've been doing real estate since we always presented our offers. Always. Because there were no fax machines. There was no email. We would in person. So anyway, and the interesting thing is that you're sitting there with the seller and you're sitting there with the seller's agent, and there wasn't all this animosity among agents that I'm seeing now, and the name calling, and then I'm not showing his listing. No, we were all professionals and we all acted like it because we had to be on our best behavior in front of the clients who were trying to get to accept our offer.
Great point. I had a sales manager that had a bunch of fax machines in his trunk so that he could give them to a client when he'd meet him to list the property. When you go over a speed bump, you hear all the fax machines go.
Hey,
My stories come with feeling.
I'd like to see, and I think this may even progress, that offers even presented over Zoom. You're still face to face with the listing agent and the seller, and you're able to put your case together. So.
Flop it right on the screen. Okay, so this came up, and it's something that we see a lot. One of the big benefits here at Signature that I've noticed is our Facebook page is amazing, where you can get on there and you can ask for help, and you can ask for vendors and referrals and things like that. When it comes to recommending a vendor to my client, what should I consider as a best practice to do so? What are the liabilities I guess I could take on?
So I've actually put together a concierge list and I send it out to my clients at the beginning of every year to say, here's the vendors that I've worked with, I've got their licensing, and I know that they're insured. And if you have a problem with any of them, I mean, we're always trying to maintain, blah, blah, blah. If you have a problem with them, please let me know. If you have anybody that you love working with, let me know. We'll give them a shot type of thing, get them on the list. But you want to make sure that when you submit a vendor, you also tell your client. So I have a disclaimer at the very bottom that says, these might be recommendations, but please do your own damn research so that I'm not the one that's liable for, something happens. It's that they have to do their own research on it. So anytime you recommend a vendor, have them do their own research or at least put it in there. I do that even in my initial journey to home ownership email that I send out to my clients when they're buyers and they're about to go into property. Like here's a couple of vendors that we recommend for, inspections, but please do your own research because these have worked for me in the past and for my clients and they've become highly recommended, but everybody's got their own personalities.
Great point. So the whole thing is make it a resource, not a command, right? A lot of times when an agent says, here's a contractor, right? Vanna's point is that she says that this is a resource for you. It's not me demanding that you use this person. I've seen a couple of agents in the company, was that you have an email like this, where she sends out the home inspectors and she sends 4 or 5 with links to their webpage and says, hey, here's what a home inspection is. You need to pick somebody. Here's a resource of 5, pick whoever you want, but here's the link to their websites and their reviews and their pricing sheets. Please let me know by the end of the day who you want to pick. That's putting all the onus onto the buyer to pick that person so that she has no liability and who it is. And I've seen many of those emails come from many people here, and I know that you guys have them. It's a great resource so that when you're standing in front of a panel or in front of the division or the commission and they say, wow, we heard that you shoved this contractor down everyone's throat and they ripped everything off. No, I didn't. I gave them a resource and they picked the contractor to rip them off. Have you ever had anyone come back and actually get ripped off by a person?
Not ripped off. I had a client that called me and said, never recommend this handyman again. And so he's off my list. And I asked what happened. It was an issue of racism and he was no longer on my list. So yeah, it's happened.
Anything else you guys want to add to the vendor referrals?
I'll just say it should be 3 vendors. So whatever the trade line is, you need to have 3 resources.
I want to say one thing though real quick just because of Shelly. Shelly is an amazing lender, and I know that every client I've given her, the clients like her more than they like me, which could be a problem on a referral basis, but the point is that she does a great job.
We like her more than we like you.
Presentation is everything, and so you'll notice when I present lenders to my client, Shelly is at the top of the page in big bold print with this is who I used on my property, and then everyone else on the page. That's presentation of multiple resources, but pointing out great vendors. I'm just putting it out there. Okay, anything else? No? Good, great. Completing the SRPD. Why is it that a buyer needs to sign one? Why is it that a seller needs to give one? Even if they haven't lived in the property, even if they don't know anything about it, even if it was tenant occupied. Explain that a little bit. It was a big topic this week. It's the law.
Well, the law is clear to say that the seller is required by Nevada state law to present or to give a completed SRPD. It actually has the word completed SRPD to the buy side. Fortunately, the law doesn't say anything about the buyer having to sign it. It doesn't say anything about having to return it. It just says the seller has to give it to the buy side. Now, of course, we want every buyer to get a copy of the SRPD filled out correctly. So my recommendation is always, because of our due skill, is that what you call that, Chris? Our reasonable skill and care, we should look at the SRPD and see if it looks like it's filled out correctly. If it's not, then maybe a suggestion to the other side to have their seller readdress numbers 9, 8, 9, 9A, 9B, 9C. I got one the other day that was for a high-rise. The high-rise, they marked that there was nothing wrong with the pool. I said, I appreciate that they think there's nothing wrong with the pool, but they don't own a pool. I understand it's part of the HOA, but that's the HOA's issue. Could we get, so there could be things on there that may not appear to be correct, and you can suggest to the other side that they have their seller readdress it. Look, their seller may go, no, I'm done. I filled it out, it's yours. Give it to your buyer. If I ever get an SRPD that I feel is filled out incorrectly, enough that I think it's a problem, I'll still present that to my buyer, but I also then present to them the document and transaction desk where they can what's it called again? buyer's acknowledgement and understanding, buyer's understanding and acknowledgement.
Buyer's notice and disclosure?
No.
You're talking about the SRPD notice where it has the,
Yeah, so there's a form that you can have your buyer sign that says, hey, we understand that the SRPD is either non-existent or filled out incorrectly, and we still want to buy the house. That holds you not liable at that point. That's what we're going to require inside your.
the seller didn't pass the written test, that's what you're saying?
Well, I mean, it happens a lot more. I mean, the one that's on Facebook right now, I mean, the seller won't even give him one because
So let's talk about that.
they won't give it to him, period. So does the buyer now buy the property? Does he not buy the property? What does that look like? So now we've got to find a way to protect ourselves and our liability.
So on that point, there's a clause in the, most people never read the SRPD, by the way. It asks the entire law that regulates why it's done on the third and fourth page. But it says in there clearly, the seller's not responsible for what they don't know, right? And what does that mean? It means that if I live in the house and I don't know of an issue because it's never come to my attention, when it comes to the question, do you know of an issue with the electrical system? I don't know of one, I check no. And so if they don't know of one and they haven't been disclosed one and there's no remembrance of one, by checking no, they're not incurring any liability because they don't know. But to Vonda's point earlier, if it's a rental property and they wrote checks to cover bills, do they know? So how would you handle that? You would take the repair bills that you've done or that rent record of the repairs and you'd attach it to the SRPD and say, I've disclosed everything that I have knowledge of. But the whole point on the argument on Facebook is that the seller is afraid to fill it out because of what? Liability. You know, I don't know what I don't know. They're protected on that. If you simply pointed that out, that it says it right here, you're not responsible for things you don't know, would they now fill one out?
It's basically a get out of jail free card for your seller. Everything that they put down, if they do mark something that they did know, and the buyer signs off and buys that house anyway, they've disclosed it. Then it's buyer beware. I mean, I had a transaction years ago where I represented the buyer and a good friend of mine represented the seller, another agent in my office, and they said that there was no alterations to the roof. And there was a roof leak. And my buyer ended up suing, and it went to court, and the judge asked, well, did you put in the skylights? And they said something about when we put in the skylights, there was no leaking. And the judge says, well, you marked here that you didn't do any alterations. And they were guilty instantly. They had to pay for it, 3 times the damages. So it's just be honest. If they ask you, should I disclose this? The answer is probably like, I would.
Do you remember how, and Jason, I'll grab you in a second, do you remember how on the SRPD it used to have a very small lane? It had 85 questions, but when you had to answer one, there had this little tiny line where you fill out the answer. That's because at the back of all the pages are blank for you to use, right? And that's been my point to a client. If you want to write a book about your house, write it on the back of each page and I'll add it so that they see it. I don't care how much you write. Get a book. It doesn't matter to me as long as you disclose it. Jason?
If a seller buys a home warranty for a buyer, does that take away a lot
No.
of
And the home warranty doesn't cover things that are already known to be a problem, right? So pre-existing conditions.
But I'll tell you, our E&O, our last policy would exempt you from having to pay the deductible if there was 3 items. One was a seller's disclosure, which you have to have anyway by law. The other was an inspection, and the third was a home warranty. And why? Because if they had those 3 things, there was less lawsuits that happened, because a lot of times an issue would be covered by that home warranty. And so those are 3 things that you probably should try to get into every transaction. That's why we ask you to put in that they waive the home warranty, because we want you to offer that. Agree with them, like the home warranty companies, whatever. At least there's an avenue for them to go and get things fixed.
So one of the responses we got last year was my client's attorney told them not to fill this out, right? We actually got that. We put a letter, written email to the attorney saying, hey, we're just letting you know this is what we're told. The attorney's like, absolutely not, don't fill that out. That's the stupidest thing in the world. I know the law, blah, blah, blah. All of that was in writing in our file to show that we did our job as the agent to notice them to do it. They took their own legal counsel and decided not to do it. And that's all documented so that we're in front of the division. At least we have something to file. Anything else on the SRP before we go into one of the best topics so far? Really?
Don't forget, I have a topic at the end.
I know, I'm not.
If you have any questions about the SRPD, you really should go talk to a broker. I mean, posting it in the Facebook group is a good idea because people learn from it. But the reality is there's so many moving pieces when it comes to an SRPD, whether you're the seller, whether you're the buyer, where you are in the transaction, you really need to go sit down and talk to a broker and say, look, this is where we're at, and get some good advice on what the possibilities are and how to best represent either your buyer or your seller.
Okay, so the most recent question on our Facebook page I thought was kind of interesting. How are high-rise deals different than traditional deals?
They're further off the ground? Is this a trick question?
So the point is that, you know, it's a different process when you're showing a high-rise. It's a different process when you're listing one, right? You can't just go up and put a lockbox on the front door of the high-rise. You got to go to the front desk, and you got to get clearance through the gate. And everyone that goes to the property has to be cleared through a security guard that never has any written information of the person that you're sending. Remember Sky? That was the worst thing in the world. They literally had a notice posted on the front desk that said everything about the people we were sending, and the guy told them that they had nothing about it. So we went in and pointed at the thing on the desk, and he's like, oh, I didn't see that. I mean, so it is a different animal, but there's tricks to it, right? And you learn that over going through it. So if you're doing a type of deal that you're not familiar with, reach out to someone in the broker management team to find out who has knowledge of that skill, and we'll pair you with somebody so they can give you some tips and tricks to make it easier for you to do it. But Access was a pain in the butt, and you couldn't just use certain vendors, you had to use their vendors for everything.
And moving is different. When you move in, you have to use a certain elevator during a certain time. You can't use all of them. There's going to be higher assessments for the properties and high rises that you need to be aware of. And there's only so many floor plans, right, that are in each high rise. And you should know the details of that high rise, how tall it is, how many units there are, you know, all the things that you need to know about high rise, because it is, and they're all very different, right? Each one of them has something that's unique. And then their facilities, their amenities are available at different places. So some of them will have the amenities, and if you're showing a high rise and you don't show the amenities, shame on you, right? Like for instance, I've got one listed at Newport. All their amenities are on the top floor. If you have one at Veer, all their amenities, depending on what, they're different floors, right? You need to know that. You need to know where those amenities are. And if you don't, you need to ask a broker, you need to call the listing agent and find out from them. And if the listing agent doesn't know, call the HOA. But do your homework on that.
I had a client rip out a sprinkler system in a high-rise with the wrong moving company van. They got U-hauled, did it themselves.
The other thing you need to be aware of is the rules on dogs, right, on pets, because not all high-rises allow you to have pets. And they have to be a certain breed or weight limits or the number of animals that you can have in the unit. So you need to be aware, because if you have a client that has a husky, they might not be allowed to bring that husky into the building. I'm pointing at you. Yeah, they're great condo dogs. Right? I mean, you need to be aware of what the rules are for them.
Okay, so the last question, then we're going to move on to Janet's great points about the committees and your opportunities at LDR. This came up on a Facebook post on our page. It came up with some questions and some classes we had. People are moving back to traditional real estate, right? And one of the big pieces that a lot of us used for years was farming. And Janet, you talked in a sales meeting about a farm that you work. And now they call it geographic marketing, right? Where you're pinpointing information and statistics to market an area. Just out of curiosity for the group, who here is farmed and who here is still farming and makes it a part of their business? Okay. So what do our agents need to know? What have you learned from the millions of dollars you've invested in subdivisions where it may not have paid off? What lessons have you learned about farming that are important?
Well, one thing is, farming is farming. You have to treat the soil, you have to plow, you have to plant the seeds, you have to water the seeds. You know? It's not, oh, what? And then, depending on what you're growing, it may take you a year or more to reap your crop. But it works. Farming does work. And several types of farming. One, you can farm a geographical area. One, you can send out a postcard or an email or whatever you can get every time you take a listing to every neighborhood. You can farm out-of-state owners. All kinds of farming. Just be consistent and be patient. I will tell you, I farmed a neighborhood with a partner, And we got a lot of business out of it. And then, unfortunately, I had to move to Guam for 2 years. And we came back, and I had been back about 2 months, and a lady in the farm called and said, I've saved your newsletters in my kitchen junk drawer. I need to sell my house. We hadn't even touched base with this woman in over 2 years, so it works.
So who here would love to start every year with a base number of deals that you're guaranteed? It's a stupid question, right? Of course you would. Farming is the one way I've continuously seen agents do that because, as Jared said, it takes some hard work this year and next year to get you established, but as long as you're consistent and continuous, you'll reap the benefits of that farm every year you put into it and years after. And the nice part is, statistically, if you understand math and the process, it's guaranteed you'll get business from it. I mean, so I can't give you guarantees in real estate, but if you farm communities and you continuously do it and you track your numbers, I can actually show you how you'll reap the benefits of that return every single year. But here's the one thing real estate agents aren't. They're not consistent, right? Have you ever picked up a Homes Illustrated magazine? If you want to see the inconsistency in the marketplace, look who was in it last month and look who's in it this month. It's very few similar people in there. That's the same thing with farming. Agents send one postcard, oh my God, I spent $1,000 and I'm going to get one phone call, right?
Well, I think that's the challenge with farming and why agents are not as successful farming as they could be. And that is that we start farming the neighborhood that we just sold that house in, and then we sell another house and we start farming that neighborhood, and then we start farming the neighborhood across town that we just, look, farming is, you don't see guys that have dirt moving from field to field, right? I mean, they farm the same field, right, Janet, is that right? Based on your, all right, explanation. So here's what I will tell you. Let your farming build, okay? Don't start with, I had someone tell me the other day they were gonna farm all of Southern Highlands. And I was like, I live in Southern Highlands, and I promise you, you're not gonna farm all of Southern Highlands. I'm not trying to be negative, I'm just trying to be realistic here. Look, pick a neighborhood. If you wanna pick the one in the very middle, start there, great. Let's get really good at that one. Like, let's consistently send something out every single month. Let's door knock in it every single month. Let's do the things that you do to do farming. And then when you're really good at that one, we'll adopt the one next door. And then we'll adopt the one next door. And eventually you can do all of Southern Highlands, and that would be great. But it's that, oh, I'm gonna spend $1,000 this month, and oh, I didn't have the closing that I thought I was gonna have, so now I'm gonna skip it this month and I'm gonna not do it till March. And that's not how you farm. So I'll tell you, pick a farm that you can financially support for 7 or 8 months, 10 months, and then build on that. Go to the next one, the next month, build it as you can afford to build it, because it is expensive.
So what you said is the biggest learning experience I had in farming is that everyone wants to conquer an area and they want to send 1,000 cards once because they have the budget for it. The open rate on a card is 4%, right? So that means that 40 people would have opened that card. And 40 people isn't enough for me to get a deal. But if I would have sent the same card to 100 people 10 times, 40 people still would have opened that card. I would have got the same benefit, but I would have saturated an area. And so I started putting my dollars that way versus trying to mass market, and I got a way better push. The other thing was sweat equity. If I send a mailer and I never go to the neighborhood, am I the market expert in the neighborhood? The answer is no. But if I send the mailer and I make the phone calls and I hold an open house and I door knock the neighborhood, have I saturated the area to build market share? And that's the point. It doesn't cost me anything to door knock, right? And it probably will help me with the resolution.
Who would want to just have a business by referral only? All right? And so everybody wants to have this business by referral. And when I teach the academy, I talk about you need 7 to 11 different ways to build your business. And I don't care what you use, but there's 2 that specifically you have to have. Number 1 is your sphere of influence, and that's how we started the meeting. Your SOI is going to guarantee you, if you market to them over time and you stay in touch with them, it'll guarantee you business long after you stop prospecting on a day-to-day basis. The second one is a farm area. The thing you need to understand is farming is a long-term activity with long-term results. That means you've got to do it for a period of time. It's repeat exposure to a specific market. Repeat exposure. It's like taking a trash can full of postcards and dumping it on their front porch. That's how much stuff you have to send them over a period of time so that you become the household name. So it takes a commitment to do it. But the key is that this is something that you're going to do for the long term benefit of your business. This is what's going to help bring business in, like Chris said. Who wants a guaranteed number of sales every single year? If you consistently market to your sphere and you consistently market to the farm area, you will have guaranteed business coming your way. Those are the only two things you have to do. So then why do we cold call and why do we prospect? Because we need now money too, right? How many of us can wait 3, 4, 5 years before we get a paycheck? You can't. So that's why you do the other activities. Meanwhile, you're farming the whole time through. You know, I always tell people 1,500 to 2,000 homes is what you should be farming. And that might seem like a lot for people, but what it comes down to is what can you commit a budget to for the entire year to make sure that you farm to them on a regular basis, and that will be the number that you can do. Whether it's 500 homes, whether it's all of Southern Highlands, if you can afford to do that, that's a different thing. But if you're going to send out one postcard to the entire Clark County once, I would say save your money, right?
What do you think of your broker panel? Give it up for your brokers. So this panel will be back next month for an update of all the issues that we found and things that good information. Until then, Janet has some information about committees at LVR that she wants to share so that you can get involved.
Okay, so we're a little over time, so I'll make this really fast. It's January. The committees are all starting anew. They have new chairman, they have new vice chairman. If you go to the open committee of your choice, or 2 or 3, in January, you are automatically a member of that committee. If you don't show up in January, guess what? You have to go to 3 meetings in a row to become a member. And if you stay with your committee and you're a member through the end of the year, guess what? In December, Brandon's going to throw a huge, beautiful party called the President's Appreciation Party, and you will be invited. It's one of the best parties all year. But let me just tell you real quick. Now, I did send out an email. Well, I typed it up and Haley sent it out yesterday to everybody that lists this. But the committee meetings start Thursday, January 6th. That's this Thursday. 9 to 10 is education. Are you interested in community outreach? Thursday, January 6th, 11 to 12:30. Are you interested in property management? Don't go if you don't have a property management permit, so I'm going to skip that one. Are you interested in trends? Tuesday, January 11th, 11 to 12:30. Are you interested in political affairs? Thursday, January 13th. Patty's the chair, and the special guest will be Assemblywoman Haiti Kasama. Okay, Thursday, January 13th. Now, this committee kind of died during COVID. It's a long story behind it if you want to know.
And you can bring new life into it.
I'll explain it. But risk management will be meeting Thursday, January 13th from 10 to 11. YPN, the old chair sitting right here in our room. Thursday, January 13th from 1 to 2:30. And interested in doing business out of the country, foreign buyers coming in and investing. Global Business Committee is Wednesday, January 19th, 10 to 11:30. Give back to your association. Get involved. Don't gripe if you're not involved. Don't complain if you're not involved. And your new president, Brandon, would appreciate your involvement. Thank you. Let's go, Brandon.
Yes, some of them are, and some, I think they're all in person right now, right?
You can go there in person, and you can also Zoom in.
At this point, they're all, as of January, they're all, you have your choice. In person at the association?
It's actually the choice of the chair, and most of them are doing the hybrid. So check with each committee. Some of them are able to just be Zoom, some are a combination of both. But.
And if you're Zooming, you must RSVP in advance so you can get the link. Go to LVR Realtors, lvrealtors.com.
Cool. Thank you guys so much for being here. Hope you enjoyed breakfast. Thank you, Shelley, for breakfast. Have a great week.